I am Carol Kennedy. I am the founder of South Carolina Secular Homeschoolers. I have been homeschooling officially since 2010. My kids are two sons, 16 and 15 years old. We have sort of a varied experience with schooling because one of my kids decided to start public school in 8th grade. So we have now returned to homeschooling because of the pandemic with him. My other son is the older one. He has been homeschooling all along, but he's taken some brick and mortar community college classes. But we have been technically homeschooling since they were born. I just wanted to do a few quick videos to answer some of the most commonly asked questions in the group. And we've been having a lot of the same questions over and over, which is fine, but just for the sake of expediency, I'd like to, share some of that knowledge here. One thing that's not necessarily a question that's being asked, but something that I really wanted to address. I just want to talk about the sudden influx of new homeschoolers and how their experience is different from many of us in the homeschooling community. They are faced with choices it may have taken us years to make, and they need an answer like yesterday. Some of us have dealt with that. Some homeschoolers have dealt with that if our kids were struggling in public school or if there was an incident that required immediate action. But it's not the norm throughout the community. So we need to talk about those differences and how our experiences are also the same in many ways. First of all, obviously, we're at a time that is different than any time that we have lived through before. So for the past few months, most of us have been doing some version of crisis schooling. Some of our kids were in public school and we were suddenly forced to help them do all of their learning from home with varying levels of support from the school or the school district. Some of us were already homeschooling, but had to face choices about whether the things we were used to doing, the field trips, the co-ops, the activities we had gotten used to, would be safe anymore. And crisis schooling is very different from homeschooling the way that most homeschoolers that have been established homeschoolers understand it. And that's something I need to make absolutely clear. What many of the new homeschoolers are seeing is not normal. It's the way that we're homeschooling right now is in reaction to the state of the world right now for most of us. Some of us have had to do crisis schooling in the past. Most homeschoolers have gone through periods where they have had to crisis school for one reason or another. Whenever you're homeschooling during some kind of upheaval, that's crisis schooling. Your normal routine is upended and you have to scramble to make something work. Maybe you were moving, or maybe there was a death in the family or a divorce. Whatever it is, it doesn't much resemble the day in, day out rhythm of homeschool. And very often things fall through the cracks when you're forced to do that. In my opinion, we have all, every parent, been crisis schooling since March. The question now is, are we going to keep crisis schooling throughout the duration of this pandemic? And the answer, in my opinion, is I just don't know. Just like some brick and mortar school families want to go back to 5 days face-to-face immediately and are ready to do that, some homeschoolers have decided to go back to business as usual. That's obviously a very personal decision for each family. But many of us plan to continue doing things a little differently. So we'll still be social distancing, having virtual classes and meetups, stuff like that. Maybe this will become our new normal, at least for a little while. Personally, I'd like to take this unfortunate opportunity to learn some new skills from my homeschool toolbox and incorporate them into our lives, even once we're able to get back out into face-to-face interactions again. For some of you, this will just be crisis schooling until you feel comfortable getting your kids back into a real-life classroom. Some of you have decided on virtual school, like Connections Academy or K-12. And there are obviously others out there. Or maybe you're using a virtual system that your school district provided. And that's a perfectly valid choice, and one I'm sure it wasn't easy to make. And although some of you may not have been given a choice depending on your district. While there are many parallels between homeschooling and virtual schooling, they are not the same thing. The main difference is that when we choose to homeschool, when homeschoolers choose to homeschool, the parents are solely responsible for the education of our children. So we are responsible for their education in point of fact, but also legally, we are responsible. With virtual school, the teachers and the district still bear that responsibility, just like they would with public school. Obviously, some homeschoolers, meticulously research and curate curricula for their kids. But even homeschoolers who purchase a boxed curriculum or sign on for classes or co-ops that are taught by someone else, those parents are still ultimately responsible for their children's education as opposed to the district being responsible. Now, having said that, virtual schooling still looks very much like homeschool, especially from the outside. Virtual schoolers still have to make their own social opportunities in most cases, just like homeschoolers do. They have similar challenges around time management. They're at home more often, which we all know comes with the fun of extra messes and all-day access to the refrigerator. The main point I want to make here is that we need to have patience with each other and try to use empathy. For me and other homeschoolers, we need to try not to exclude virtual schoolers from the conversation right now. They are facing their own challenges, many of which we can help them through. And for virtual schoolers, I want you to try to understand why it's so important to homeschoolers to make that difference clear. Our experiences are fundamentally different. It would be impossible to group homeschoolers into a homogeneous mass, obviously, but homeschooling is the point of this group. Homeschoolers are in control of their children's education. They can choose to farm out some of the actual work, but they are ultimately responsible. We decide what style of homeschooling we will subscribe to, and there will be a video for that coming up. We choose curricula, or we choose not to use curricula. We get to know our children's learning styles and build an educational experience around that. In many cases, homeschooling bleeds into every area of our lives, including our social circles and our family vacations. So, a lot of the conversations that we're having in the group are not necessarily going to apply to everyone. For me, though, homeschooling has been one of the most rewarding choices I've ever made in my life. The reason I'm here making this video for you is because it's something I believe in, and I want to support anyone making that same choice. Having said that, homeschooling is not right for every family for many reasons. And if virtual school or brick and mortar classrooms work better for you, I fully support that decision. And I still want to help you through this weird time of crisis schooling. So if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. We're going to have a series of videos like this explaining some basic questions that we keep getting asked over and over about homeschooling, about being home, about choosing curricula, choosing styles. We also have a files section in the group that we're going to try and fill up with resources. So check those first, but if you can't find what you're looking for, always feel free to reach out to me, one of the other admins, or just post in the group. There's so much experience there. Someone will be able to help you. And good luck to everyone I appreciate you watching this whole thing, and I will see you out there in cyberspace soon.